What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks in our season preview series. And hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Seriously, it would help me, my channel, the algorithm, all that out a ton if you take a moment, just hit that like button. If you're around here, want to see more of this series, like what you see, want to see more football content in general, just hit that big red subscribe button. And tell me what you think about the Seahawks down below in the comment section. You know, how many wins is realistic for this squad? You know, where are your expectations at for Geno Smith, Drew Lock? Who are some X factors and games you're looking forward to watching the Seahawks play this year? Love to have your thoughts. I respond to just about every comment, so let's talk about Seattle down below. New to the series, welcome to it. We're nearly to the end, so be sure to go back out and check out some of the videos we've already made. Without further ado, let's jump into our win range and projected win total. Then we'll talk about this roster position group by position group. Obviously, I think Seattle's, one of the front runners for the number one overall pick next year, so 3 to 5 wins shouldn't be too surprising. I mean, move on from the best quarterback in franchise history. You have, Pete Carroll towards the end of his career as a head coach, and you kind of going back to Russ. He was doing a whole lot to keep the ship from sinking, and now that he's gone, I think the Titanic is fully into the Atlantic, to stick with that analogy. So, obviously Geno Smith, Drew Lock, that's been a public battle throughout training camp. Geno gets the nod to start the year, so I'm a little bit higher on Smith just because I think the floor is a little higher, but obviously a lot comes with higher upside, so I'd be kind of surprised if we don't see him at some point this year, especially if Seattle's going to be a 3 or 4 win team. Why not see what he can bring to the table? Get to the running back position. Definitely sucks, with what's going on with Chris Carson, but Rashad Penny looked really good towards the end of last year, and hopefully Kenneth Murray can bounce back from his injury to start the year, so it's going to be a whole lot of Rashad Penny, but if he plays like he did towards the end of last year, that's a reason for optimism for the former first-round pick. And then you get to the wide receivers. Obviously, DK Metcalf gets an extension. I think that's great business. I think this is a Seattle team that 2 really good off seasons, that is, this team can be back in the playoff mix. And then, 2 solid enough off seasons, you can start to flirt with that idea. Tyler Lockett's still in the building. This might be his last year in Seattle, to be honest with you, just because his cap hit, his age, makes it feel like he's somebody who could be, moved on from, especially if D. Eskridge, we'll talk about later on, if he's a hit, that would go a long way. And then right now it's Freddie Swain slotted in as the started slot wide receiver, no pun intended, but I'd like to see Eskridge earn that job. Then you get to the offensive line, and Charles Cross, and Abe Lucas, those 2 rookie tackles have been really, really impressive. Charles Cross was my number 1 tackle in last year's draft class, so I'm really happy to see he's taking the offense well, and 2 air raid guys, to see them be movers of people in the run game. That's an encouraging sign. Damian Lewis goes down with an injury. That interior of the offensive line's a little rough, but if those tackles hit, that is as big of a win the Seahawks can get this year, because 2 positions of high value right there, left and right tackle, and just have that taken care of, it makes it a whole lot easier to be able to, once you get a rookie quarterback or whatever the play is, get a true gauge on how they fit within that offense. So some holes in the offensive line, but I'm optimistic about the early returns on Cross and Lucas. Switching over to the defense, we'll talk about Darrell Taylor later on, but Uchenna Nwosu, a signing from the Chargers. All in all, this front 4 is not great. And honestly, the front 7 in and of itself isn't all that impressive. You also have Poona Ford and Al Woods. Shelby Harris comes over in the Russell Wilson deal. He's a solid player, but the players who are pretty good are on the wrong side of 30, and then you're still holding on to an LJ Collier. So leaves a lot to be desired. I think Darrell Taylor could be the guy who takes that step forward, though, so optimistic about his prospects this year. And then Jordan Brooks, former first-round pick, can he take a step forward, and especially no longer with Bobby Wagner, that role is his as the Mike. And then the rest of that linebacking group isn't anything to write home about, Kobe Barton and Tanner Muse. So a lot of weight on the shoulders of Jordan Brooks for sure. And then you get to the secondary, that's the safeties are nice to have there, Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams, 2 nice players, and I think their skill sets can complement each other pretty well. Adams, I still am a believer in his talent. I think he can do a lot of different things at a high level. But, man, this cornerback group is brutal, man. Sidney Jones is your number 1. He's had some moments. He's had some big games, but most of it, when you take the sum of his resume, it is not very good. And then you're talking about Artie Burns, who, as a Steelers fan, let me just be frank with your Seahawks fans, he's not good. And then you're talking about Kobe White and Tariq Woolen, 2 rookies. Obviously, question marks there anytime a rookie comes to the equation. So, not a whole lot to be excited about, but that kind of takes us into our realistic goal as a transition. So, if the foundation's laid, right, like, we'll talk about Kobe White later, maybe he's a hit this year, and it's like, all right, cool, we have a starting outside corner in the mix. Okay, awesome. Or maybe it's those tackles, and it's like, all right, left and right tackle, we're set there. Or, maybe Lucas struggles in Stone Forsythe. I thought they got good value of him as a 6th round in the 2021 draft. But nonetheless, this is going to be a team that loses a lot of games. If I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm just trying to think about what's the next jersey I'm going to buy. Who's that next young player that's going to impress me and become a fan favorite? Is it, D. Eskridge? Is it Cross? Is it Rashad Penny maybe? But that's the type of stuff I'm looking for. And realistically, again, I think this team in 2 off seasons can be playoff competitive once again, especially if, you talk about the draft they had this past year. If that type of track record and John Schneider gets, to where he was leading up to the Legion of Boom with his, his draft analysis and selections he makes, that would be huge. So a couple off seasons away, but who on this roster now will be in the mix and be a starter once you get to that 2 or 3 years time? So that's the things I'm looking for out of the Seahawks this year. And I'm sorry, Seattle fans, you guys are going to lose a lot of games. So that's the most optimism I can bring to you. Reach goal. 1, you have the 2022 draft class shine. So again, those tackles and, once we get to see Kenneth Walker, I'd like to see him play well. But then also the pass rush is solid or better. So, again, Shelby Harris, been a good football player for the last couple of years. Maybe Darrell Taylor takes that step forward. And if that pass rush, that front 4 can just be like average, that goes a long ways to alleviating my concerns about the secondary. Because as I see it right now, I think it's a middling below average pass rush with a really bad secondary, and that just screams holes to be picked and big plays to be given up and 30 points or so a week given up by the Seahawks defense. So if that pass rush, I'm a little more optimistic about them taking a step forward and kind of being solid, average, or maybe more. So if that hits, that again goes a long way to trying to get the Seahawks quickly back into the playoff conversation. So let's move on to our X factors here. These are not superstars. Now, granted, there's not a whole lot of superstars on the Seahawks roster, but in this part of the episode or of the video, I'm not talking about superstars. I'm talking about people I think can make a true 50-50 difference. Or in this case, really for Seattle, since there's not any superstars, these are the players I think could break onto the scene and become guys that are fixtures on the roster in 2 and 3 years' time. So starting with D. Eskridge, 2nd round pick, got a lot of flack for it at the time. Did feel like maybe a round early with the selection, but I also think he has the skill set to become a potential Tyler Lockett replacement. So to get that money off the books and get a little younger at the position, that is promising. Good speed, crafty with the ball in his hands, and then if he adds a little bit of deep route running ability, the ability to play corners and show him one thing, play another one off of it, stack them a little bit smaller, so that the stacking is kind of an interesting component within that. But if he learns to add that element of being able to get open, 25, 30 plus yards down the field on top of what he can do as a yak weapon, okay, you might have your next Tyler Lockett and allow you to move on from an aging veteran. Darrell Taylor, again, going back to this, he is the one pass rusher I'm kind of interested to see just what it does come together and looks like. Didn't get to see a whole lot of them, last year. And the Pro Football Focus grade, pretty sure is in the mid-50s. I'll double check that. Yeah, I just went back and looked it up. Yeah, PFF grade at 57.6. And, the coverage grade's actually pretty decent at 69. Nice, right? But then pass rush grade, 62.1. But he was one of these guys where, originally drafted 2nd round pick in 2020, and then the COVID year kind of plays into that. That's why, last year was his first year playing. But, can he be a Sam, linebacker who's a component in the pass rush game, or does need to be down on the defensive line? So his snap alignment is going to be an interesting one to watch, but primarily play on the defensive line, so I would expect more of that this year. But 6'4", 255 kind of fits that 4-man front as a 4-3 DN type. So can he take that step forward? Only time will tell that story, but if he does take that step forward and becomes a guy who, again, former 2nd round pick, good athlete as well. So if he does take that step forward, it gives Seattle a piece that, long term maybe could be a part of the mixture. And, Uchenna Nwosu is kind of this hybrid guy, so I'm not really setting my expectations too high for him as a pass rusher. But hey, maybe with a new scene and a new role, he will take that step forward and he'll become, a part of that pass rush mix. And then lastly, Kobe White, Tariq Woolen, 2 rookies. So Kobe White was actually the college football, highest graded coverage player last year, again using Pro Football Focus's numbers, which is interesting considering he was the guy playing opposite of Sauce Gardner, but very different body type than Sauce, a little bit smaller, kind of your maybe traditional group of 5 corner, right around 5'11" to 6 foot, and again, not pterodactyl arms like Sauce Gardner. But then Tariq Woolen, on the other hand, coming from UTSA, 6'4", blazing fast, long arms, feels like the type of Seattle corner that they were trying, they had with Richard Sherman and then wanted Baron Browning to be, all these, Seattle type of corners. Tariq Woolen looks a lot like them, but then has that athletic ability that, Richard Sherman's one of the best corners of my lifetime, but wasn't, running a 4.3 or 4.4 or anything like that. Woolen's got that type of speed, but learning the position still, later convert from wide receiver to corner, and it's going to take some time, to be honest, but, maybe with a zone-heavy defense in Seattle, that will help, decrease that learning curve and have him out in the field. But realistically, the reason one of these two guys is on this list is because, as I noted earlier, Artie Burns is just not good, and Sidney Jones gives you some flashes, but all in all, not great. So these two are going to have an opportunity to see the field, and maybe it's just one of them that hits, or maybe it's both of them. That would be a huge plus there for Seattle, especially when you talk about that on top of those two tackles. But if one of these two guys showcases, hey, I can hold my own, I can stick, specifically at the outside corner spot, that would go a long way, and again, give one more piece into the mix for the long-term projection for the Seattle Seahawks roster. So I'm probably a little more optimistic about Kobe White. I think he's looked pretty good this preseason. Woolen, though, project, but if it pans out with that size and speed, that could be unreal and a huge plus for Seattle. Moving on to games to watch, no division games here. They do play in a loaded division, so those are obviously all good games to watch. There is a commonality here between the Falcons, Giants, and Panthers. These are all winnable games. These are all games that I think, the Seahawks are playing other teams that probably fit in that bottom 8, what I call the bottom barrel, that bottom 4th of the league. So winnable games from that, perspective. They're all at home as well, which helps. But when you look at, Atlanta, whoever is starting, hopefully Drake London is in this game, but him, Kyle Pitts, Auden Tate, those big body types against, Sidney Jones, Artie Burns, Tariq Woolen, Kobe White. I just want to see how the secondary holds up because I'm actually optimistic about the wide receiver room, the pass-catching core that the Falcons have. It's one of the things I do like about that roster, despite not being high on Atlanta and most people not thinking all that much of Atlanta. The wide receivers are interesting, and Seattle's weakness, of course, in the secondary makes this a little bit of an advantage there for Atlanta. And then also A.J. Terrell versus DK Metcalf. So, yeah, that's a one-on-one battle I am definitely going to be watching. Going ahead to Week 8 against the Giants, again, similar situation where it's like, there's some talent in the wide receiver room. I'm hoping Kenny Golladay is able to turn the clock back. So again, what is that Seattle second? I'm going to be asking that pretty much every week of the year. Same thing could be said about DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson with the Panthers, but also the DK Metcalf factor, him versus Adoree Jackson. That's an interesting one. But also for the Giants, Charles Cross versus Kayvon Thibodeau. That battle between my number 2 edge, my number 1 tackle, I cannot wait to see that. And on the other side, Azeez Ojulari versus Abe Lucas. Another fun component, second-year edge versus third-round tackle. That's been pretty promising. So that's exciting. And also, it's just going to be fun to gauge where these two teams are with their quarterback. Like, does Daniel Jones does he look like he's gotten any better? Does Geno Smith actually run this offense pretty well in Seattle? And then also the run component, maybe that's an edge there for Seattle. Assuming we're going to see a big part of that offense be the running game. I don't think the Giants is a very very good, great or elite run defense. So there might be an opportunity there for Seattle. Create a favorable game script. Score early, use the run game, get a lead, and then milk the clock and kind of steal one away from the Giants, if you want to call it stealing it away from them. But then lastly, Carolina Panthers, again, the corner wide receiver battle is going to be a fun one. J.C. Horn versus DK Metcalf. Again, that's going to be fun. This is also an interior for Carolina. It's been disappointing. Derek Brown just has not taken that step forward. Been, I guess, okay as a run stopper, but even last year took a step back there, and the pass rush has not been there. So when you look at Seattle, interior offensive line, it is a weakness, but could this be a game where Derek Brown shines, or Davion Nixon maybe is a, second-year, fifth-round pick? Can he take that step forward? Matt Ioannidis could be a factor. So how does that Seattle interior offensive line hold up against, a question mark for Seattle? Who has the edge there? Brian Burns versus, Charles Cross. So there's a lot of one-on-one matchups through all three of these matchups that make me really excited to watch Seattle. And again, I think that's the mindset you have to have. It's like these pieces that could be part of our long-term fixture and a piece of the roster once we get to playoff, competition, and maybe, looking at a Super Bowl window. Let me see how these one-on-ones play out. Can Charles Cross prove that he's a left tackle that can go toe-to-toe with any edge rusher? Those are the types of things I'm looking for. So, again, I think the Seattle team's going to be kind of rough, but there are some intriguing upside young players with high potential, and those one-on-ones are going to be fun ones to watch this year. But that's going to do it for my Seattle Seahawks season preview video. Tell me what you think about this squad down below in the comment section. How many wins do you think is realistic? Who are some X factors, some games to look forward to watch? And which one of these young players do you think hits right away? I'd love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about the Seahawks down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and help me out a ton. If you're new around here, want to see more football content like what you saw today, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.